take a listen. This is Trump at his presser.
So Iran wants to meet. As you know, their sites were obliterated. They're very evil nuclear sites. They were, now has been proven. We had some fake news for a little while. The same people that covered the Hunter Biden laptop was from Russia. The same people that did 3 or 4 other Russia hoax.
But on their
No, wait, just listen. They came up with something that delayed the credit that our great pilots and these great what talent that was, and they hit it right down in the spot, 52,000 feet. Think of this dark, no moon, you couldn't see a thing. And they hit the refrigerator door, as they say. That's the size of a target, and overwhelmingly. And it's amazing what was done. We're the only ones that could have done it. And we took out the 2 of the other sites also. In addition to that, we finished them off. That was a very evil intention. I believe that, and again, time will tell, but I don't believe that they're going to go back into nuclear anytime soon. They spent over $1 trillion on nuclear, and they never got it together. And nothing was moved from the site, by the way. To do that is very dangerous. It's very, very heavy material. Those cars were most likely the cars of masons because they were pouring concrete at the top, at the hatch, as you know, the hatch going into the nuclear site. They wanted to reinforce it, and they had some masons there pouring concrete. By the way, that concrete was obliterated.
Well, there's nobody better to talk about that and to tell us whatever he might know from his sources about how productive the bunker busting bombs were. And not that I doubt Trump. I think he's 100% right, but it's great to hear from other folks, too. But I've got with me Lieutenant Colonel Sargis Sangari, U.S. Army retired. He's a 20-year veteran of the United States Army Infantry and Special Operations Forces with multiple combat deployments to Iraq, a diplomatic assignment to Kuwait, and several other deployments to the Middle East. He is himself, by birth, Iranian. So I think that's important. Right now, he's the CEO of the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, which he founded in 2014. And so he also founded the United Assyrian Appeal, which serves as its first president, which the IRS recognized for 501c3 status, and it provides services and funding to support better health, education, general welfare of survivors and those displaced by the genocide perpetrated against Christian communities in the Near East and adjacent countries. And that's also something of interest to me because there's also been this talk now that you are going to find more Christians in Iran than you will Muslims. I mean, I don't know if that's true. That seems a little bit far-fetched. Certainly there are still populations there. But Sargis, thanks so much for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was good to be here, Jeanne.
Yes. So let's just take this a little bit in order. First of all, what about the destructiveness of the bunker busting bombs? Mission complete?
Well, I mean, the facility's been destroyed. Anybody can see that. That's it doesn't take a genius to see that the bombs didn't work. The operation was successful. Now, as far as whether or not that changes the perspective of the Iranian government, I think the Iranian government perspective was being changed even before the bombs were being dropped. Keep in mind, the Iranians have, going back now since the revolution, tried to work with the Russians. It hasn't really paid off for them the way they would like. They tried to work with the Chinese, and they ended up basically selling Iran to the Chinese for almost $432 billion plus. And then they tried working with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which China is a lead on, and Russia and Iran are signatories to now. But that didn't work out for them. They didn't help them. They tried to utilizing Hamas, Hezbollah, Yemen proxies, and the Yemenis proxies signed a deal with the Americans. And also at the same time, the other proxy leaders that they had were basically killed. And even Hezbollah didn't bother to help do anything on behest of the Iranians over the 12 days that they were at war. So they are looking to get back to where they were during the Shah's time, which was a good relationship with the United States, whatever that relationship looks like.
So you think this means a regime change?
Yes and no.
Okay.
A regime change has to be done by the people inside of the country. You know, you have 90 million Iranians. Since the...
Yeah, we found that out from the Tucker Carlson, Ted Cruz brush-up thing. So stupid.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
ceasefire, Iran has been concentrating internally, getting rid of any opposition possible. Even going back to 4 days prior to us bombing those facilities, the Iranians were already shifting their focus. They had already given up on the issue that they were going to do anything tactically with their air defense capabilities against what was being, dropped on them by the Israelis. And they started concentrating on possible infiltration raids from northern Iraq through the Kurdish, groups into Iran. So they were already just focused on that. And they've been just doing what they can to clean house. Again, for us from the U.S. side, I will tell folks that we're not interested about the internal issues that are taking place. We're hoping that one day the Iranian people are going to be strong enough to be able to stand up against their government, but they would need the actual army to be strong enough to side with them. And when we talk about the actual army, we're talking about the Artesh, the regular army, and whether or not the regular army is strong enough to buck against the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. That right now doesn't seem like they're in a position that they can stand up and side with the people of Iran yet. So we'll see what ends up. If the people take to the streets and the regime change happens, it happens. If it doesn't, U.S. will deal with whoever is the leadership of Iran when it comes to signing an agreement or a deal. If anything, the one thing that can attest to that is the fact that we signed an agreement with the Houthis, and we also signed an agreement with the leadership in Syria, which is part of the Muslim Brotherhood.
That's right. That's shocking.
And who had killed American servicemen. Now, I always tell folks, whether you like it or not, Iran and Syria are still part of the United Nations, and they're recognized as actual governments of those nations, and we have to work with those governments.
So speaking of that, though, you did see regime change happen in Syria. And of course, you had, Iran was very much involved in the previous Syrian government, Assad. They support him. But you don't, is that a catalyst? Is that factor in at all? There may be regime change in Iran.
There may be a regime change, and I think that's what everybody's hoping for. But we don't know what that regime is going to look like, to be honest.
Right, because it could be anything. You could have a Muslim Brotherhood.
It may not be that, but you could have some form of that. Look, Iran is very critical geographically. Yes. Everybody needs Iran. I mean, from where Iran sits, you could affect north, south, east, west. I mean, it connects. It's a connecting road to from Europe to Asia, from the west to the east, from the south to the north. I mean, it's just the reality of where it sits geographically. From a U.S. perspective, to be honest, I think it's a government that we know, and is a government that, as it sits right now, if you want to look at it from a perspective that why would it be better for the U.S. strategically to have them there? Because every time you have a bad actor like Iran there, now that is pretty much neutered, anytime that you can get what you need to get from the Arab nations, you can always point to them and say, hey, the threat is still sitting there. You sure you don't want to play with us? And then, they focus more on actually addressing the concerns and issues that we have. Abrams report didn't just manifest itself out of the blue. It manifests itself because of the fact that there was a threat of an Iranian capability there that led the Arab nations to come to the table.
So, by all appearances, their nuclear weapons program is completely obliterated. Russia and China stayed out of the fight, did not get involved. Israel dismantled their air defenses and their air force. They're essentially neutered. So the only thing that they are concerned about is maintaining power and getting some sort of deal with Trump at this point so that they can stabilize relations, because otherwise they'll be facing sanctions again. And I guess that would be just as detrimental and could lead to regime change. Is that how you see it?
Well, they have sanctions against them already, but they were bypassing it. Trump is offering him to come out of the sanctions and do it on the open because it also helps them leverage China when it comes to the resources they need. Iran has a lot of resources that not any of the other Arab nations in their area, and Iran is not Arab, of course, that can provide that. So because of that, naturally, it makes sense for the U.S. in the long term to have a relationship with Iran. And I don't think you'll ever have a functional peace in the Middle East unless we strike a deal with Iran. And this is not a deal between administration and the Iranian government. This is something that would have to go through Congress to get, or to the Senate to be ratified as a treaty. And I think once that is done, you'll see a functional peace in the region.
So, Sargis, you follow this pretty closely. Especially considering that you're the CEO of the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, and you have, you're Iranian by descent and all that. So, do you think that Trump is playing 4D chess, like some people say that he is? And I think that he is thinking out of the box, or he's thinking past what would have been previous diplomatic agreements or the way that you handle an adversary. I think he is looking past that. Or do you think that kind of what played out and the way that it's playing out now, do you think that this was pretty much the way it was going to happen? I mean, how do you rate him on this, on the way that he took the action? And did he see something? Did he understand the human nature of what was going on better than previous leaders? I personally think that he did.
No, I think I tell people, if you take your emotions out of it,
right.
And yesterday I had to brief, a group of 90 individuals from Japan, retired, but military, political leaders, some already in, and they were asking about these issues because they're interested globally. And I told them, look, listen, for the United States, what happens in Taiwan is much more important than what happens between Iran and Israel, to be honest. I said, if tomorrow, the most extreme example, we wake up in the morning and we found out that there was a tactical nuke used by the Iranians against Israel, and then, of course, Israel retaliated and dropped tactical nukes on Iran, and Tehran was gone, our water would be still functioning, our TV would be functioning, our cell phones would be functioning here. We would not have an issue as much as we would believe that we have it. We wouldn't. But if tomorrow Taiwan is gone and 90% of the chip technology that we need for DoD, for civilian use, and there's a cyber fight between U.S. and China and possible war that has been already war gamed, you're talking about civilization stopping for us. You're talking about us not being able to function, our electricity, our water sources, everything else. So then the worst case scenario, even a nuclear war between two nations in the Middle East doesn't affect us as negatively as what would happen in Taiwan, what would happen if you lose that capability, TSMC is gone. But that's, I think, what Trump is understanding and looking at. The problem is, we have to come to that reality that we're independent when it comes to oil. We don't need to even rely on oil in the long term if we don't want to. We could be the exporter of it. There's nothing in the region that tells us that we have to focus on that. Iran is not going to be able to put a ballistic missile and launch it against our capabilities. Even here, we're going after their cell networks, and we're cleaning them up in the homeland as required.
Yep, they just caught a network out in California.
Yeah, and one thing, when people were talking about why is Trump activating the military forces to be in California, because he was thinking ahead of the possibility, to the strike. And guess what? Where were those forces activated? Under the guise that, there was an immigration issue. You have 1 million Iranians in that area where we had our Marines already ready to go under the commander-in-chief's control if anything happened with possible strikes against us if Iran decided to retaliate here at homeland. So we got to be honest about the reality of whether or not, something that happens between Israel and Iran is detrimental to us in the long term. And frankly, it's not. It might be for those two nations. But for us, we can kind of withstand whatever they decide to do against each other. But for us, I think it has given Trump leverage. Israel, when you pick up the phone and tell the Israelis, you will turn your aircrafts back around, and they do, guess what? You're not working for them. They're working for you. And when you tell the Iranians, you can come to the table now, sign a deal, after destroying their nuclear facilities, they realize they have no choice, that this is the only option you have. At least you're keeping the door open for them. Whether or not they decide to come to the table, is up to them. I think if there's going to be a regime change, it has to be internal. And that internal regime change will have to come only when the army backs the people. Otherwise, it's going to be an absolute massacre that the people will not survive. Right now, we're not interested in that internally from the U.S. side.
That's right.
We're interested in a long-term deal with the government of Iran, whatever that government is. He's
Sargis Sangari, retired Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army, 20-year veteran of Infantry and Special Forces Operations, and CEO of the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement. Thanks so much, Sargis, for that awesome insight. I really appreciate you coming on this Sunday night.
Anytime. Much appreciated.
And we'll be right back. This is The Real Story with Jeanne Ives.